wherever it is that you want leadership to show up, you better get clear about what is it that's unique that opportunity provides to people.
Welcome to A Better Lifestyle. I am your host, Richard, and I will be with you throughout this journey. This show is here to empower individuals to do more in life professionally. You will find a variety of topics that will help you to be more productive and more successful. So join me and the professionals from different industries as we bring education and knowledge for more success. Hi, everybody. My name is Richard. Welcome to A Better Lifestyle. Today, our topic is leadership, and I have the pleasure to have Robert White. So he is a man of wisdom and of experience. Welcome, Robert, to my podcast. Welcome to A Better Lifestyle. Welcome.
Thanks, Richard. I'll agree on the experience part. The wisdom, we're going to find out, I guess, in a few minutes.
Okay. Well, I trust you. From your bio, I think you have a lot of wisdom, and I've listened to some of your past podcasts before with other people.
Well, leadership has been an interest of mine for a long time. First of all, because I started to have some success with my companies and started realizing, first of all, where I was lacking in terms of leadership, and also that I had some natural ability and that I needed to learn a lot more. So that's kind of been my history around leadership, is that yes, you can get some of it from a book, but a lot of it comes from experience and mentors and coaches. So that's been my background around the subject of leadership. We might start out by talking about a failure that I had. Years ago, I attended one of the early human potential movement trainings. And at that time, I was 27 years old. I was broke. I had a fairly severe health problem. I had daily chest pain. I had had 3 heart attacks, and I'd been told I wouldn't live past 35. And then in addition to that, I was divorced and felt really guilty about it. So I went to this seminar. A friend kind of pushed me into it. And it sounds like a cliche all these years later, but it changed my life for the better. I learned a lot about personal responsibility and the power within that. I learned a lot about how I was using being critical, not in a productive way, but in a way of forcing people away from me. A lot of great things from that training. My business got better, my personal life got better, and I started sending people to that training. Well, that led to the president or the chairman of that company and the founder of that company approaching me and asking if I would please come out and meet him in California. So I did. And 10 days later, I was president of that company, Mind Dynamics. And I spent 4 years there, 2 years kind of straightening out it's the only 4 years I worked for someone else, by the way. But I spent 2 years kind of straightening out the US business, and then 2 years running around the world, opening foreign subsidiaries of Mind Dynamics. An incredible experience for a young guy. I was 30 years old at the time. And then one of the owners of Mind Dynamics died in a plane crash. And Alexander Everett, the founder, took that as an opportunity to leave himself. He sold his shares to the estate of his late partner. They did that because we had a lot of cash, and the IRS comes knocking on your door in the US for the tax money, and we had that cash. So the estate bought the company to get access to our cash, and it made it impossible for me to do my job. So I quit. And I formed a company called LifeSpring. Now, LifeSpring has gone on to have 17 training centers in the US to just do a fabulous job. But after 6 months, I sold my shares and started a different company. And it's what I learned there about leadership that I still teach today with my mentoring clients, with my executive clients. And what I learned is the importance of these very subjective, so-called soft things called purpose, vision, values, and strategic intent. What I realized in running LifeSpring and having it be largely dissatisfying is that in Mind Dynamics, I didn't have to think about those things. In fact, I don't even know if I knew the terms. I just did my job. What I didn't realize was that Alexander Everett, the founder, was maintaining the purpose, vision, values, and strategic intent of the company. I was just executing it. So, later, I've lived in Asia for 23 years of my working life. So I'm a bit of a student of Asian sayings, let's say Confucius and Lao Tzu and others like that. And one of the Zen sayings is that fish don't describe water very well. What I realized is that at Mind Dynamics, I wasn't able to describe the culture that Alexander had created as a leader. I didn't even have the terms. And so I got to the point with my own company that I owned of not wanting to go to work in the morning because there was so much dissension, there was so much a lack of alignment, there was a lack of focus. And it just, nobody was happy, and beginning with me. So that learning the importance for a leader of a clearly defined purpose, a unique reason for being as an organization, a compelling vision that attracts people, and finally, I guess not finally, but a set of core values that you're absolutely committed to and that are positive in nature. The strategic intent part was pretty easy for me, but really taking a deep dive into those other three, purpose, vision, and values, is what I recommend today for anybody that wants to lead anything. A profit company, a nonprofit company, a church group, a political campaign, or wherever it is that you want leadership to show up, you better get clear about what is it that's unique that opportunity provides to people. What is the compelling vision? And I'm not talking about, mission is thrown around and goals. I'm talking about a compelling future state that probably will not be accomplished in your lifetime, that you're going to have that entire organization live into. And then what are your values? What are the values that, if they are violated, will result in an all hands on deck, an emergency meeting, a real reevaluation of either the people that are involved in a values violation, or a department, or the entire company sometimes. So if you're clear about those three things, I think you're beginning to fulfill the unique role of a leader.
That was a great introduction. Are leaders born or are they built? In your
opinion? That's like I think it was Will Rogers, the humorist back in our parents' days, who said that never ask a barber if you need a haircut. Yeah. Or in your case, you're not going to ask a barber for anything. And I'm increasingly getting closer and closer to you, Richard. Look, I'm always going to say that leaders are made because that's my business. And it's also my experience. I was not a leader. I certainly was not born a leader. I'm a fairly severe introvert. My background just didn't prepare for me to lead. So I've had to learn it. And I believe strongly that anybody can learn to be a better leader and an effective leader. Some people are born where they are thrown to leadership. It's just natural to them. An interesting thing about those people, they can't teach it. The people that are just born with that kind of natural leadership ability almost never are able to teach it to others. And if you look at one of the roles of leadership is to develop other leaders, then they're handicapped because they didn't go through that step-by-step process that I had to go through and that many other people have to go through. So that's my recommendation in that area is if you think you have to be born to be a leader, it's an excuse. There, you can learn.
Okay. What are the key traits of a leader?
Key traits.
Yeah.
Uh, in my previous company, I had 70 full-time trainers of this high-impact experiential learning material. It's not an easy job, takes a couple of years to learn. So, and we're paying people while they're learning and they're not producing any revenue. So choosing the people became really important, and having kind of a filter for the people that we would hire. And we were sometimes wrong, by the way, even with the filters. But here are those filters because I think they apply with leaders in terms of criteria. Number one, we wanted people with a strong ego drive. Now, ego gets a bad reputation, right? Because many people kind of abuse it, and it's the heart of narcissism, and all of that stuff. But your ego is your picture of yourself, and you better have a strong picture of yourself if you want to be a leader. You need to do the work on you to the point where you have some confidence in you as a human being, and not the human being that will be a different way someday, but the one that you're living right now. Realizing that all of us, 7+ billion people, have this unique ability. One of my friends, Arjun Sen, very famous, very effective marketing consultant, he talks about people being one of one. And we are all one of one. And whether you have a religious background or a secular background, it's that we're here on this planet to express something, and it's unique. 7 billion unique people. So the first part is to have a strong ego basis, not one that's out of control, not one you're not aware of, but one that has some strength to it. The second piece almost sounds like it's the opposite, and in some ways it is, and that is to be empathic, to be able to sense what other people are feeling and thinking, and to be observant. My former wife talks about awareness in an interesting way. She calls it developing a higher state of noticing. I think leaders, first of all, are pretty strong people with a strong ego. And secondly, they have a higher state of noticing. They are empathic. I think a third one today that's more important than ever is to be vulnerable, to have the willingness to be open and honest with the people that you're working to lead. I think that's a powerful, powerful trait. Brene Brown has a typical TED talk, like less than 18 minutes, with last time I checked, 55 million views. Now, I don't think 55 million people watched that video. I think they're like me. I've watched it 4 times, maybe 5 times, because it's that good. And anybody, I think, wanting to be a leader, wanting to understand the importance of vulnerability and begin to develop it, that's a pretty good start, is Brene Brown's TED Talk on YouTube. And again, I said, number one, the strong ego. Well, vulnerability is usually seen as that's impossible to have a strong ego and be vulnerable. Great leaders demonstrate that every day, that you can be strong, confident, and be open and honest about yourself, open yourself up to people. I think those are some traits of leaders. I mean, the natural ones, you better work hard, and you better be honest with people. You better develop the ability to talk about purpose, vision, and values in a really compelling way. But I think, and the other one is you better have some raw intelligence, because you're going to have to learn a lot fast.
Okay. What is, in your opinion, what is good leadership?
When people follow.
Okay.
It's not about what you do, it's what's the result that you're producing. Paying a lot of attention on you while while people are not following you. I've been supporting a charity in Sri Lanka for many years called Sarvodaya. And on my first visit there years ago, I think I've been there 5 times now. But the first visit, they gave us some time to be a tourist. And one of the tourist things was this gigantic rock. It was like Ayers Rock in Australia is what it reminded me of, because it's out in the middle of a plain. It isn't like here in Colorado where there's a mountain and then another mountain and another mountain. This was just one big rock. And you can climb up this thing. And then, by the way, they have vendors at every turn when you're climbing up, selling you water and selling you all kinds of stuff. But when you get up on top, what you see are the ruins of a complete village. All of the foundations are there because they're stone. They carved the foundations out of the rock that they were standing on. And it's been deserted for many years. And so they share the story of this. And the story is that the prince, this is back in the days of royalty in Sri Lanka, and the prince killed his father so that he could get control of the country. Terrible story. And everybody rejected him after he did that. And his brother took over the kingdom and the army and drove him across Sri Lanka to this rock. And this guy and his entire army climbed the rock. They built that village. They arranged for water, food, gardens, and they lived there for a while. But that prince wanted to go back and grab control of the country. And the story goes that he got all ready to do that. He took his army down from the rock and marched off toward the capital, Colombo, Sri Lanka. And suddenly he realized his entire army had deserted him. Behind him was nothing. That's a pretty big leadership failure. So the way that he operated with those people was such that they wouldn't follow him. That's a gigantic leadership failure story, but there are stories like that in American business. The American company Bed Bath & Beyond went from being a superstar in retailing to near bankruptcy today based on a leader who could not get his team to follow him.
Wow. Sometimes there's chaos, whether if you're running a business or you're in a position of leadership. When there's chaos, how does one lead under pressure?
I think on the job basis that there are 3 things that a leader needs to create. Now, I'm assuming there's some clarity around purpose, vision, and values. Well, the other 3 things are focus, alignment, and commitment. And when things are chaotic, it's extremely important to be a constant reminder of the focus. What are we up to here? And then alignment. Are we, not that we're all being the same and the same personality and all that sameness. That was true in our Father's Day or Grandfather's Day. The famous one was IBM, where everybody was wearing a white shirt and not with no patterns. They were not allowed, and a tie and a suit coat on at all times. Everybody had to look a certain way, talk a certain way, be a certain way to be part of IBM at that time. No longer true, by the way. But no, alignment means we've got some railings here, some behaviors that are acceptable in this company, some ways of operating, and there's ways outside the rails that we don't allow. But those rails are pretty far apart. And therefore, you have the freedom to operate in an aligned way, not under agreements, but alignment. And I think particularly with younger people today, that's extremely important. And then finally, what makes everything work is commitment. People that are just there during a chaotic time, people that are there just for a paycheck, that's a big problem. They should be somewhere else, not in your company or your organization. So I think that in chaotic times, the leader's job becomes one of executing around focus, alignment, and commitment.
Great. So if someone wants to stay on top of their game as a leader, what do you think they would have to do?
Wow, they have to do all of those things and then do them again the next day. I do a lot of my work and training with stories, so I don't want to bore your audience with too many stories, but I think this is a great one. Uh, I was doing a turnaround of our Japanese business years ago. And, by that time I had moved to Aspen. I was semi-retired, but the Japanese company got in trouble and it needed hands-on instead of thousands of miles away. And I didn't want to rent an apartment, furnish it, and all that stuff, which I had done in Japan. And I felt that I'd left that behind me. And I had thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of points on Hyatt hotels. So I wanted to set an example of saving money for my Japanese operation. And I didn't want an apartment. So I moved into the Park Hyatt, one of the loveliest hotels in the world. It's actually that movie with Bill Murray was filmed mostly in the Park Hyatt. And so I had a lovely room. And on top of the Park Hyatt was at that time the most popular restaurant in that gigantic city of Tokyo, called the New York Grill. And one of the things, I'm alone, I'm in Japan alone, and I don't like to sit at a table alone. And I wanted to go to the New York Grill one night a week, enjoy the food, enjoy the jazz. It was very American atmosphere, really. So they had 4 chairs at a counter, and that counter looked into the kitchen. So I would sit there and watch. I love watching people. I love watching leadership. And the chef of the New York Grill was an anomaly. I mean, like a really incredibly unusual person for Japan at that time. This is more than 20 years ago. And she was female, she was young, and she didn't speak Japanese. She was American. And she's running this huge kitchen in the most popular restaurant in all of Tokyo, won all of the awards, all of that stuff. So I'm watching. And what she did was, first of all, she didn't cook anything. What she did was she stationed herself in the middle of the kitchen. And when the I don't know, sous chefs or whatever you want to call those people that actually do the cooking in these big restaurants, when they brought the food to her, they would bring it to her before the waiter would see it. And I watched her, Richard, toss entire plates of beautifully looking food into the garbage while screaming obscenities. I've never seen anything like that. I mean, but clearly she was not happy with how that food looked or smelled or something. And she would force them to do it over again. And I'm thinking, this young woman is creating day by day excellence. How is she doing it? So shortly after I started really noticing that, I held a meeting with Japanese business people who were graduates of our program, our leadership programs. And I wanted to do something in that. I wanted to ask them a favor in terms of support for my turnaround. And I thought I need to contribute something to them. So I decided I wanted to have this woman talk to them. She's an amazing leader and kind of from an unusual place. So I went to the management of the hotel and I said, this is what I want. And they said, great, we'll arrange it. And the next day they showed up at my room with a bottle of wine and a sandwich and all kinds of stuff, some chocolates, and to apologize. She said no. So, I'm a big deal platinum member of Hyatt's points thing or whatever. So I leaned on that a little bit and I said to the management, that's unacceptable. I want her there. So he went and leaned on her. So she showed up for the meeting looking about as angry as you could look and still be a human being. It was not a good thing. Forcing somebody to come to a meeting like that is not a good thing. And so I decided just to go ahead with it. I kind of pretended she wasn't angry. And she gave a little short talk, and then we had Q&A. And one of the guys said, okay, I understand how you create one night. That's excellent. But every night? How do you do that? And that's the leadership lesson she gave all of us. She said, you have to source that job, leadership, every minute of every hour of every day of every week of every month of every year. You have to be the source of that excellence. And that's been a leadership lesson that has served me well. And when I have forgotten it, Richard, I've gotten in trouble. And, I mean, I've had some huge success, but I've also had some huge failures. And I can trace them back to that one conversation. Are you willing to source your business every minute, every hour, every day, every week?
So let me ask you, what are the mistakes you see in leadership?
The number one today is it's some kind of a balance between being a victim of the economy, of your own people, of your education or lack of it, whatever. People still playing the victim role. That's a terrible place to be if you're pretending to be a leader, because you are pretending if you're a victim. And the other one on a higher level, the kind of people that I work with, is this vulnerability piece. And especially if it's a male leader, there are increasingly female leaders that I work with and that are in key positions in our total economy. And women generally get this vulnerability piece quicker than men do. And but where it's missing, if women try to be like men, that's a problem because they become less vulnerable. Men, we are learned to be the strong, silent type. And that's what gets in our way as leaders. We need to be more open with people as human beings. And of course, you don't forget about the results you're all trying to work toward. But you better do that as a human being, not as some kind of an automaton,
Okay. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to wrap it up. What are your final advice for people who aspire to be leaders, aspire to have a leadership role?
I don't know if it's advice, it's a challenge. And the challenge is to really step into leadership. It is desperately needed. It's needed in families, needed in companies, needed in nonprofits, it's needed in communities, and it's needed in the nation. It is a noble calling, Richard, and it is worth some effort. It is worth some pain. It's worth some struggle. It's worth getting past anything from your past that is stopping you. It means getting really rigorous about telling the truth about current reality. And it means that you really need to be living into a vision that is positive and life affirming. It's desperately needed. You are, the expression, of course, is doing the Lord's work. It's doing work that really is unique to you in your way of doing it, and finding out what that is, finding out what works in terms of moving people toward positive goals, and it's valuable. It's incredibly valuable. You should be proud if you have a willingness to step into leadership. That's something you should be proud of. That's something you should pay a price for in terms of learning and growth and feedback and all these things that we kind of tend to avoid. But it's worthwhile.
Okay, thanks. That was a great advice. Just quick stuff. What are the stuff that you're working on right now in the moment?
Well, one of my daughters teases me because I've become a book salesman. So that's one thing. My book is now in its third printing, Living an Extraordinary Life. It's available in English, in traditional Chinese, and in simplified Chinese. It's a bestseller in all three of those markets. It's also available on Kindle and so on Amazon. But if you go to my website, therobertwhite.com, you'll find a way to purchase the book, and then you get it signed. So I can't sign them for Amazon, but I can sign them if you personally order. And so I'm selling books. I'm doing mentoring of entrepreneurs and executives within companies where there's an entrepreneurial flair. a commitment to create extraordinary results. And I'm doing some leadership training. So that's what I'm up to. You can reach me at therobertwhite.com. You can sign up for my weekly e-zine. It's free, and several thousand people think it's valuable. So I do work hard on it.
Great. Anywhere else besides the website they could follow you if people want to follow you, like on social media? Are there any places? So I will put them in the show notes.
Well, Richard, I'm old, so I'm not a big social media fan, but I do have a presence on LinkedIn,
Okay.
Robert White, and add that word extraordinary, and you'll find me, I think. So that's a good way to also to connect.
Okay, no problem. It will be in the show notes, so people could find you on LinkedIn and the website you mentioned before. Can you mention the website again?
TheRobertWhite.com.
Okay, great. All right. So thanks, Robert, for your time. It was I'm very happy that we finally got to connect because it was a little bit hectic for the connection
For
to be
both of
made.
us.
Yeah, both of us, but we finally made it. Yeah. So thanks a lot for your time, and I hope some people found value in it in this leadership topic. So my name is Richard, and I was with Robert White. The topic was leadership. So we'll see you, everybody, on the next episode of Welcome to a Better Lifestyle. So bye, everybody. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Richard. I love what you're doing.
All right. Thanks. Bye, everybody.